The most frustrating thing about Iceman is that it's not a bad album. In fact, there are moments where Drake sounds more vulnerable, more introspective, and more lyrically focused than he has in years. But every time the album gets close to saying something meaningful, he pulls away from it. Because the central problem with Iceman isn't the production, it isn't the bars, it isn't even Kendrick Lamar, it's Drake. This album had the opportunity to explain what happened after the biggest public loss of his career. Instead, it became another entry in a pattern we've been watching for almost a decade. A pattern where everybody else is responsible for Drake's problems except Drake. And that's why I don't think it will ever change. When artists release albums, they're usually defining an era. The problem is that Drake's last several eras all feel like the same era. Iceman's rollout began in 2024, and the surrounding narrative was that UMG aimed to defame Drake. Yet he wants you to think that he was too big for the machine to touch. The one who stood up to what's inherently wrong with society and one for society's greater good. But I didn't want any of that from Iceman. Not that, no replies to Kendrick or dissing those in the industry. Just accountability and good music. Accountability didn't have to be apologies, working with people you hate, etc. It just had to be ownership. What did I miss? Make Them Cry serves as the intro to the album, and it is the most important song on the album. Not because it's the best, but rather because it contains the album that Drake should have made. Lyrics like "What Died in 2024" was a big piece, so it's like, this shit is me, but it isn't me. Y'all keep asking me what it did to me. That's what it did to me. This is the first moment where Drake acknowledges that the beef actually affected him. But why stop there? Nobody wants to hear another round of battle bars. People want to know what it felt like, what it was like seeing entire stadiums scream A minor. Whether Drake wants to admit it or not, this wasn't just rap beef. This was a cultural moment. People who never cared about hip-hop knew the lyrics. Athletes were singing it. Politicians were referencing it. Stadiums were chanting it. You don't just move on from something like that. Then towards the end of the song, Drake states, "My dad got cancer right now. We battling stages." This was the most powerful moment on the album, because for a second the beef, the industry, and the lawsuits disappear. Now we're talking about real life, but then Drake moves on. You could have made an entire song about you being an only child and having to take care of him, or how this may affect your son, knowing that the time with his grandfather is limited. Instead, we go right back to the industry grievances, making me feel like you brought it up for sympathy purposes. Make Them Know illustrates another missed opportunity for Drake when he says, "I'll never forget that July, the worst that it felt in a while." This could have served as an emotional centerpiece of the album, but Drake refuses to elaborate, because elaborating means admitting why that summer hurt. You'd have to acknowledge that you told Kendrick to address how you like young girls. Talk about him liking young girls, that's a kid for me. However, you were too prideful and consumed by your own hubris to tell us your feelings were hurt. What did I miss? Thus perfectly illustrates Drake's victim complex. He discusses his numerous plaques, accolades, successes, and prominent influence. Moreover, he seemingly uses dust as a metaphor to hint at how long he's been carrying the rap game, as dust forms on things that have been left out for a long period of time, which I found clever. My gripe is that a key element of fascism is making it appear as though the entire world is organized against you, when in fact you are in the most advantageous and powerful position in society. Aubrey Drake Graham is a textbook example of this phenomena. You cannot simultaneously be the most powerful artist of your generation and the oppressed underdog. Those things cannot coexist. On a song like "What Did I Miss," albeit catchy and fun to sing, serves as the thesis of the album. Drake spends the entire song posing the wrong question. He wants to know, why did everyone side with Kendrick? But the more real question is, why were they all willing to? Why did so many people hear Kendrick accusations and immediately believe them? Why did so many relationships seem ready to collapse the second pressure was applied? That's the uncomfortable conversation, and it's the one that Drake avoids. Moreover, Drake tends to present what he did for others as retribution, claiming they owe him loyalty. "I gave you a feature," or "I made you popular to the masses." You've been sneak dissing, throwing subliminals, and overall being a dickhead to people. Now, don't get me wrong, all of them teaming up and being on dick for 2 consecutive albums is crazy. So, I'm not saying you can't be upset, but it's been 2 years. If you're gonna say something, say it back then. Then we finally arrive at Bees on the Table. The biggest topic I wanted him to address was the lawsuit and how he would frame it. The only thing he says is, "I'm fighting the man, not suing the rapper." Okay, but where was this energy when the machine was helping you? When the man was using payola to boost your numbers, it was no issue. Whenever you dropped an album, your face was plastered all over Spotify. But now when capitalism leans towards Kendrick because he was selling more than you at the time, it was an issue? Also, one thing to note is that, especially after his last album, 21 Savage, you can go ahead and retire with Lotto. What did I miss? Throughout the album, Drake repeatedly tries to lie and rewrite history, which creates many contradictions. On Whisper My Name, for instance, Drake exclaims, "My honor comes from the shit that I do for the ones that I love. It's between M and I. Your honor comes from the court," and he offers a plea deal so that you could cut off some time. This section is so comical that it genuinely made me laugh. The irony writes itself. Drake spends the entire song talking about standing on business while simultaneously being the one in court over a rap song. I genuinely couldn't make this up if I tried. Then on the same song he states, "Baby boy please, I heard what you said to lil bro about me. Yeah, and when you run to the Iceman, what you gonna do except freeze? You not about to squeeze, you not in the streets. I'm cutting niggas off at the knees. There ain't no standing on business with me." I like how he insinuates that this person would freeze, seemingly because they're fearful of him, playing into this Iceman persona. As clever as it may be, Drake has a tendency to act tough, and that was a problem I've had with him since Scorpion, specifically mob ties. You're an actor from a good neighborhood who has never had ties to anything of that sort. Now listen, I'm not from that life and I'm a really good dude, but on my way to school as an elementary school student, I would see dead bodies. I lived around gang warfare and violence, and thus I know what it takes. So for him to use it as a mask that he can wear whenever it's convenient for him is distasteful. This is not a lifestyle anyone desires, rather they do it because of their material circumstances. Drake is arguably one of the greatest actors hip-hop has ever produced, and sometimes it feels like he is still acting. Then we arrive to Ran to Atlanta. This song is so shameless on both sides, honestly. Future literally assembled the Avengers to call this man a predator. And then a couple of years later, they're back in the studio together. At some point, somebody had to acknowledge the elephant in the room. I'm supposed to believe that they just walked in, pressed record, and acted as if nothing happened. Next, on Make Them Pay, Drake attacks people's character for good reason, but it's evident that this is a cop-out because he's upset they didn't choose his side. He raps, "Me, I stood 10 T's and accepted the mission, cause I'd much rather death than submission. How can you press the ignition and let some memories of the past affect your decision? I love you cause of the history, but if we being real, I can never forgive you. And your people are still waiting for a free Palestine, but apparently everything is in black and white and red and green. Damn. I hate J. Cole as much as the next guy, but how can you never forgive him? But you can forgive Future." Furthermore, he does make a resounding argument against DJ Khaled. Palestinians have been subjected to a genocide for several decades. The issue isn't whether he's correct. The issue is that this concern only appears when it's useful for a diss. Principles shouldn't be situational. It's the same when Kendrick discloses this taste of Drake taking advantage of young girls, yet he brought out Dr. Dre to the pop-out and gave his evil twin 3 features. The issue with things like this is that people allow the agenda to take precedence above all else. This is especially evident on Too Hard for the Radio. Back when they was asking about where Davidson was at, not everybody got a blue 30 on their back. Steph Curry's an alleged Zionist who was donating money to Israeli intelligence, yet you give him a homage. As bad as he sounds rapping on this West Coast beat, I actually think that it would have been a great troll song for him to have dropped during the beef instead of tailor-made. Additionally, this makes me respect Joey Badass more for hopping on Tupac's Hit 'Em Up on his Crash Dummy diss to the West Coast and putting belt on Kendrick and the rest of his collective. What did I miss? Despite everything I've said thus far, this isn't a bad album by any means. The production is rich, there are many beat switches that keep you entertained, and the mixing is excellent. There are genuine highlights. Make Them Remember, for example, is the best song on the project. It featured his most focused writing, most interesting bars, and most intentional rapping. This was Aubrey in his bag, and the best lyrical song he's had in years, which isn't hard to top when he has lines like these riddled throughout the entirety of Iceman. These boys dress up and think that they somebody, shit is like Comic Con. What kind of Switch? Not Nintendo. These niggas measuring a dick size in millimeters. Shout out to Cherokee D and Sky Black, cause they was at my birthday when I was searching for big booty ebonies. Jeez, bro, you were 40 still gooning? This is ridiculous. Ironic cause the Iceman was a nice man, and he hot and cold. And I mean, who could forget the infamous
this Epstein angle was the shit I expected.
Although Make Them Remember is just disses, I can appreciate the craftiness behind each line. Lyrics like, "Oh, you'll live to see another day, and even if you don't, it's just another day. And to hold something over my head forever, you're still a couple feet away. Your insecurities keep spanning season to season like you Issa Rae. I could have fell back like the married rapper, but we engaged. I told y'all I'm settled in my evil ways. I shouldn't even be shocked to see you in that arena because you always made your crew off switching teams." I'm not gonna lie, there's nothing you could say to diss Braun that would make me take it seriously. You had him tattooed on your skin, and you were stuttering in his barbershop episode.
Yeah, what'd I tell you?
What did you say to him?
You said that I can never let you down.
Is it fair skin or the Jewish roots? Why people want to not see me on top of the mountain like I do the do? This is clever as he uses not see as a homonym for Nazi, considering his Jewish roots. But this is also the first time I've ever seen him speak on this. We oftentimes shame him for never saying anything in regard to the black community, but he also never calls out anti-Semitism and or acts that target the Jewish community. Please stop asking about what's going on with 23andMe. I'm a real nigga and he's not. It's in my DNA. This is clever because 23andMe offers DNA testing, and he later reinforces that by saying being a real nigga is in his DNA. The problem is that this song is still mostly disses. Even his best song can't escape the album's obsession. Moving on to National Treasures, he rapped, "We could have been dealing in the spur of a moment, cause why did we think you could get us a ring?" Now listen, I've seen the constant battles between LeBron and DeRozan will always get out-meated. I could have told you that nigga was gonna retire ringless. What's also funny is that DeRozan's getting done worse than anyone on the album. Also, this line serves as a smooth homonym for Kawhi Leonard. You know, the guy was actually able to deliver a championship to Toronto. There are verses where he gets into a pocket and dominates on the album, like, "I rack up the tab at Chanel cause I do buy everything like I'm Middle Eastern." Homonym for the country Dubai. Drake is still talented and the charisma is there. That's what makes this so frustrating. The ability is still there, but when all you do is resort to dissing, you look crazy, especially when everyone else is finished. You're like the jealous ex who won't move on.
What did I miss?
Drake never changes. Every Drake album eventually becomes about fake friends, fake love, enemies, women, betrayal, paranoia, and distrust. At a certain point, you have to ask, how is everybody always the problem? How are all your relationships ending badly? How are all your collaborators switching up? How are all your exes toxic? How are all your friends fake? Eventually, the common denominator becomes glaringly impossible to ignore. Frustrating part about Iceman isn't that Drake made a bad album. It's that he almost made it interesting. There are moments throughout the project where you can see the album that it could have been. The album where Drake talks honestly about losing, about embarrassment, about seeing the world laugh at him, about watching his image crack, about why that summer hurt. But that album never arrives. Instead, we get another Drake album, another album about the fake friends, another album about the enemies, another album about women, another album where everybody else is the problem except Drake. And that's why I don't think Drake will ever change. Not because he can't, but because change requires accountability. And accountability requires admitting that maybe, just maybe, the common denominator in all these situations is you.